The King, Sleep, and Moths. This is the audiobook review of Sleeping Beauties by Stephen and Owen King and narrated by Marin Ireland. Alright, so let's get into it. Again, I'm going to start off with a quick do I recommend or don't I recommend for those less patient of you out there that don't want to wait to the end of the video. But first, I would like to put a little disclaimer. I am a huge Stephen King fan. I've read not all his work, but I've read a lot of his work, including the Dark Tower series. And I love Stephen King. With that said, I cannot recommend this book. The only individuals I could recommend this book to would be the completionists out there. So if you've already read everything he has to offer and you want to keep your record intact, by all means, listen to this book. There is enjoyment to be had, but I would not recommend it to the majority. And let's get into why. So let's begin with the story. Sleeping Beauty, for the most part, takes place entirely in a fictional county named Dooling County, which is in the Appalachian Tri-County area. So for those of you who know exactly where that's at, it takes place there. Along with the place is actually one of my pet peeves against the story on this book, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go into this. The premise of this book is actually quite intriguing. So you take a society built upon men and women, and you just ask a simple question. What happens if women went away? Knowing that humanity and essentially would end. Where this book starts falling apart for me, at least where the story started falling apart, was you get this through the people in Dooling. You get this news of this virus, the Aurora, that's sweeping through the nation, going from west to east. So you're getting reports of these women that are not waking up. This is pivotal because the disease or the sickness does not begin in Dooling County. By no means is Dooling County an epicenter in any form or fashion, which to me drives me to ask one question. Why is Dooling County so pivotal? Was there some sort of sacred something back from sacred sometime? Never really goes into that, and that's one of those questions that never really get answered. And as you meet the characters, they're not special in any means that you can relate to, be like, this individual or these individuals were chosen because of X. No, that's for the most part they're ordinary people, which is normally one of Stephen King's strengths, that you can really relate to these people. But knowing that this disease did not start here, but for some reason this is the pivotal area, and it didn't end here neither, so it's not like it started somewhere else and this was the end point and everything comes Dooling County. The Appalachians are not as far east as you go. So just it's a loophole or open plot point that just never really gets covered, never really gets answered, and a lot of the story just falls apart from there. So where Stephen King, most of the time, he's a master at this craft. So he's like, there's a time machine in the closet over there. You never question why there's a time machine in that closet. There's a time machine in that closet, and you move on. You go on with the story. And the story is normally so great that you don't need to understand why that closet holds a time machine. But in this particular story, in Sleeping Beauties, the story is not that great. So you start questioning some of those mechanics. Why Dooling County? Why our protagonists? So you got Clint and a Lila, and they're the center points of the story, but they're very weak center points. They're humanized. They have their inner workings going on, but it is very, very weak. Neither of them you feel very connected to. At least I didn't. And their path through this story, their hero's journey, if you will, is not very much of a journey. It's very tame. And it feeds into that larger question. Why are these two so pivotal? Why are these women and these men so pivotal in this story? So I've been trashing on this audiobook for a little bit, but there are some high points. Wiley or Willie. I refer to him as Wiley because he's a wily character. He's an older gentleman, he's awesome. Listen out for him, and he every time he comes on the board to play, it's enjoyable. Number one character is Van Lampley. She's a security guard at a prison. She's a arm wrestling champion, and she has done very well. So as women fall asleep, they get cocooned, and the story takes off. Van Lampley was probably the last woman on the planet to fall asleep. She is a badass, and she is a badass. And she does a lot of things in this book that no one sees, which in my opinion makes her even more badass, because she's not doing it for any sort of recognition, where other characters in this book can be argued that, are you doing this because you believe in the greater good? Are you doing this because you want to be the hero? So Van Lampley, she was doing it because she is a hero. Not because she wanted to be a hero. She just is. And by far, she is the best character in the story. Evie, which is our villain. Yeah, well, let's call her a villain. She's our villain. She is interesting. But this brings me down to a further plot point. So no talking spoilers here. And Evie, as you can imagine, she's a magical being, and she is tied to this Aurora virus. And we can say safely that she initiated it. And in the end, the conclusion, this whole centerpiece, this whole war is really so women can make a choice, right? So it just strikes me as odd as why she would choose now and why she would choose Dueling County for that choice to be made. I mean, there were times where women were a lot more repressed, and there are places now where women are a lot more repressed. I think this story would have been a lot more powerful had they at least mentioned that this had taken place before, and that the women chose what they chose, or if the whole setting was not Dueling County, but one of these areas where women have less rights than they do right now. I don't want to throw any country under the bus, so I'll just leave it to your imagination. So again, plot points that just don't make sense when you think in the larger scheme of things. It would have been more powerful had it been taking place pretty much anywhere but here. So the story, Stephen King, and Owen King, they focus on a couple points. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the pool. If you do read this, the pool, it's a pool. There was a love child kind of being thrown in there, and I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was going somewhere, and it ultimately did not. So this book is politically charged. I think it really does depict an accurate view of what would happen if women just one day went away. I could really see the men, us on this side, acting the way we acted. Fake news is mentioned on there. Fake news is dangerous, and this book really highlights that. And I think that was probably one of the better underlining factors. It was one of the ones that was more well done. A couple other factors questioning the validity of reform in our correctional system. I think that was another one that was fairly well done. There's an instance of blue versus Black Lives Matter. I think they should have left it out, because it wasn't given the time that it should have been given, and it wasn't done in a tactful way. There's definitely a hero in that circumstance, and there's a clear message in that circumstances, but some of these other underlying factors at least were kind of reoccurring, where this was just like boom, and then it went away, and you're like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. It didn't add too much to the story, essentially. So I think that was just more like, what else can we put in here? I don't know. What's on the news? Oh, blue and Black Lives Matter. Let's figure out we can throw that in there. That's what it felt like. And when you want to put in a politically charged type of aspect in your book, I think you have the responsibility just to do it as well thought out as possible. And definitely that one was not done. Two big items that come up, and they're fairly reoccurring in this, is animal cruelty and the foster care system. I think these two were done fairly well. So let's talk about the worst character. And not worst as in worst developed, just a very bad person. And it was Officer Peters. This guy, he just, he was a bad, poor excuse of a human. I'm not even going to say he's a poor excuse of a man. He is. But it goes beyond that. This guy is just... But again, even though I love to hate him, when you write someone in this nature, and you really just want to reach into your phone or your Alexa or whatever you're listening to this audiobook and kind of just smack them upside the head, you're doing a good job as a writer. And I thought this individual was gonna go a different route. In the end, he stayed true to his character, so I guess I can say that. He did stay true to his character, but I expected him to have a more satisfying conclusion, I suppose I would say. So, that's it for story. So, as you can tell, this story has a lot of good, it has a lot of bad. There is enjoyment to be had here. This audiobook is about 24 hours long. So it is one heck of a listen. So with that, I would give Sleeping Beauties a 3 out of 5 when it comes to story. So let's talk narration. Marin Ireland, she did a good job. She did a really good job. She's very talented. Enjoyed a lot of her characters. The narration was not top notch, but I don't think it was her fault. I think, again, going back to that story, it's hard to have good narration with a not so good story. So that's kind of one of those hard things to measure. But what I can say is I enjoyed her narration, but the story definitely hindered it. So that's why I personally would give narration a 3 out of 5. So now let's talk about listenability. Well, I think I've made my point pretty clear. Listenability, to me, I don't think I'll ever listen to this again. I might. No. There's so many other Stephen King books I would rather listen to. I've listened to a lot of Stephen King books on audio. And let me just tell you, Salem's Lot, right there. I would listen to that one 10 times in a row before I listen to this one again. So listenability, a 1 out of 5. So that leaves us with the total score of 2 out of 5. Again, if you're still here listening, that's why I leave my quick thumbs up, thumbs down at the beginning, because these audiobook reviews tend to be kind of long. But I cannot recommend this. The only people I would recommend this to are the completionists and the diehard Stephen King fans out there that, just he can do no wrong. If you're one of those, then by all means, listen to this book. It'll be well worth your time. So that was another episode of Joe Talks. Thank you for listening. Hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Ring that bell to get notified. And we'll see you next time.